Your birthday is in 3 days. Someone asks if you have plans, if you're doing anything special. And you feel it, that quiet tightness in your chest. Not excitement, not anticipation, but the discomfort of being perceived, of being expected to celebrate something you'd rather let pass unnoticed. So you say something vague. Probably just a quiet day. They look confused. The unspoken question hangs in the air. Why wouldn't you want to celebrate? But the truth is more complicated than that. Because when your birthday comes around, you don't feel joy. You feel exposed. Like a spotlight just turned on, one you never asked for, and everyone is waiting for you to perform gratitude, happiness, enthusiasm, emotions that don't come naturally when the attention is on you. So you treat it like any other day. You go to work, you run errands, you let the messages pile up without answering. And when people ask why you don't make a bigger deal out of it, you struggle to explain this one quiet truth. Making it small feels safer than making it matter. Because if it doesn't matter, it can't disappoint you. Most people assume this is about humility. They think you're modest, low-key, someone who doesn't need attention. But that explanation misses something deeper. Because avoiding your birthday isn't always about not wanting to be celebrated. Sometimes it's about not knowing how to hold celebration without feeling like you're asking for too much. Somewhere along the way, you learned to make yourself small, not just on your birthday, but in life. You don't ask for much. You don't take up space. You've learned how to be helpful without being burdensome, present without being demanding. And your birthday? That's the one day a year when invisibility becomes impossible. Suddenly, people want to know what you want, what would make you happy, and that question alone feels overwhelming because at some point, wanting things out loud stopped feeling safe. Maybe your needs were dismissed growing up. Maybe your birthday was forgotten, overshadowed, or treated like an inconvenience. Maybe you watched others be celebrated with a warmth that never quite reached you. So you adopted. You stopped expecting. You told yourself it didn't matter, and treating your birthday like a normal day became a form of control. If you don't build it up, it can't let you down. Over time, this pattern often turns into one of 3 roles. The invisible child, who learned early that staying unnoticed meant staying safe. The self-sufficient skeptic, who doesn't trust celebration that feels obligatory or rehearsed. Or the uncomfortable recipient, who freezes when attention lands on them, apologizes for gifts, and feels like appreciation creates debt. If one of those felt uncomfortably familiar, you're not imagining it. Because you don't just dislike birthdays, you struggle with receiving. When people sing to you, your body stiffens. When someone gives you a gift, you over-explain your gratitude. You deflect with humor. You minimize the moment. Being celebrated doesn't feel good. It feels like pressure, like now you owe something in return. This discomfort often comes from early experiences where receiving had conditions, where love came with expectations, where gifts weren't just gifts, they were reminders of obligation. So you learned that giving was safer than receiving, and your birthday became the annual reminder of how uneasy it feels to be on the receiving end of care. Think of your sense of worthiness like a bank account. For some people, it was filled early, small achievements noticed, presents appreciated, milestones acknowledged. But for others, that account stayed nearly empty. Attention was conditional, celebration was rare, affection had to be earned. Psychologists call this worthiness conditioning, the internal rules we develop about whether we deserve care, attention, and celebration. And here's what happens when that conditioning runs low. Celebration doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a spotlight on everything you believe you haven't done enough to deserve it. So your nervous system does what it's designed to do. It protects you. By minimizing the day, by keeping expectations low, by treating your birthday like it's nothing special. Not because you don't want to be celebrated, but because celebration activates feelings you never learned how to hold. Here's the part that matters most. This pattern didn't develop because you're ungrateful,
And it didn't develop because you're broken. It developed because at some point, making your birthday matter came with too much risk. Risk of disappointment, risk of unmet expectations, risk of realizing once again that care didn't arrive the way you needed it to. So you learned to want less. And for a long time, that worked. It kept you safe. It kept you in control. But what protected you then can quietly isolate you now. You're not cold. You're cautious. You're not indifferent. You're protecting yourself from old emotional math that no longer fits your life. And noticing this pattern, that awareness, isn't a flaw. It's the beginning of something different. Not forcing yourself to throw a party you don't want. Not pretending to enjoy attention that feels overwhelming. But maybe letting yourself want something small. Something real. Something that doesn't feel like a performance. Because you are worth celebrating. Not for what you've achieved, not for what you provide, just for being here. If this resonated, we explain the psychology behind everyday habits, one pattern at a time.